RRC Polytechnic for being the venue sponsor for this screening and the panel discussion, and it's a great partnership, so thank you so much for that. I will start with a land acknowledgement that the the RRC Polytechnic uses. So Red River College Polytechnic campuses are located on the original lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation, and the water is sourced from Shoal Lake 40. So I just wanted to start that off, and to start this process off in a good way, I'd like to invite Elder Albert Mccloud to come and open for us.
Thank you, Rand, and as well as the staff who helped organize tonight's viewing. I am a knowledge keeper actually with Red River College Polytechnic, and Polytechnic was added recently, so I looked it up on Google. And it means many arts, and so education, formal education, and different disciplines that Red River College provides also has an idea about the artistic element, and so you're sitting on a piece of art from a local artist, and that rendition the star blanket is also birchwork. I'm trying to remember which work that it is, either Casey Adams or Jackie Travis. Casey Adams. As well as this roof has some art from Jackie Travis, a local artist who graduated at the University of Manitoba. And I looked online at the image of this building, and it really struck me as it looks like a longhouse from the Eastern Canada Indigenous peoples, and a very beautiful building. And so tonight, to begin the work we're doing on viewing this film about the fruit machine and the impacts of the LGBTQ purge in Canada's history and the healing of that experience during this Human Rights Conference on LGBTQ2 experiences in Winnipeg. I was telling Todd here, who's one of the survivors of the purge, something that happened on Canada Day last year, which was there was a memorial for those students who had died in Indian residential schools, and the people were walking down Broadway, and a group split off, and they're all wearing orange t-shirts. And they pulled the statue of Queen Victoria off her pedestal. And it was quite a demonstration of decolonization and reconciliation. And as I mentioned earlier in this week, that when we think about imperialism and colonization around the world over the last 500 years, we see it as very powerful. And when the statue was turned over, we had thought it was made of pure, solid metal, and then we learned that it was actually hollow. So for us, it became a good metaphor for how we perceive colonization and imperialism and the legacy of colonization. Elizabeth also took a nosedive that same day around the corner, and those two statues are in storage. Our province does not know what to do, and maybe that's a good thing, that they are reflecting, and I think that is about reconciliation, taking time to reflect on the implications of young people pulling down those statues that day, on Canada Day, and a message about imperialism and colonization, and representation in our legislative bodies as well. Also told Todd that Queen Victoria's head was found in the Red River by a kayaker later on. Now that sounds like a title for a movie or a topic for a book that could be written soon. And I know that Doug mentioned, I think was it today, that the crown is eternal, but we are not. I really question that because that day her crown also disappeared from her statue and is still missing. So that crown may not be as eternal as we assume it to be. And so one day it might pop up. I know the Métis bell went missing for quite a while and it came back eventually. But I just wanted to sort of introduce you to Manitoba. And so this building is called Manitou Abbey, where the spirit exists. And that is about the Indigenous perspective on land. And spirits for Indigenous people are amorphous. They don't have shape, like we would recognize. And where a lot of our understanding of supreme spirituality is a replication of the human image, the human body, the human experience. And Indigenous people didn't have that, right? They saw the world as dynamic, full of energy, mostly unexplained, full of power, lightning, rain, thunder. And so those spirits, again, could not be contained in the way that we see our daily life. You could not put lightning in a bottle. So what the people believed in this territory is that the spirit exists here in Manitoba. There's an island just north of Winnipeg here called Spirit Island. And in Indigenous history, there were places called power places where humans did not venture. That was space for the spirits to exist, to live. And that people didn't hunt there, they didn't trap there, and they only went there to do ceremony or leave offerings. Now in our history, it hasn't been that way. We've paved a lot of land. We've, made fields that go on for mile after mile after mile for agriculture. And we've erased those power places where spirits used to exist. But Manitoba is seen as that place, a very spiritual place in the center of Turtle Island. The other part of the name of this building is, look at my notes, Vidi Azege, which means brings light. And that's about education, right? Knowledge. And that this building will bring light and bring knowledge to the students and the educators that come and work in this building. So I'll welcome you to this territory, to this screening, and to spend some time sharing part of our history as Canadians, our colonial history, and finding pathways of healing with dealing with that reality.
Thank you so much. For those of you in the back, please feel free to come on in and have a seat. Before I introduce some of the our speakers for the beginning of the film, I just want to do some housekeeping. So all of our washrooms here are gender inclusive. So they're just down the hall to the left, and there's also more washrooms on the first floor as you came in. If you're in this space seated, not actively drinking or eating, please wear a mask for speaking. So please do that. I would really appreciate it. It's part of part of the efforts to keep everybody safe. Would be great. So thank you so much for doing that. And so with that being said, I'd like to invite RRC Polytechnic's Vice President of Academic to the podium to say a few words of welcome again. Thank you so much for hosting us here today.
Good evening, and say welcome. My name is Dr. Christine Watson. I am Vice President Academic at RRC Polytech, and it gives me a great pleasure to welcome you to our beautiful new Roundhouse Auditorium, which we just opened a month ago. I want to thank Alert Mccloud, not only for being a knowledge keeper for RRC Polytech and helping to guide our decisions in a good way, but also for welcoming you to RRC campuses that are located on Indigenous territory and acknowledging that we are here as guests. I'm a fourth generation settler, and I recognize that I have the privilege of being here only as a result of the devastation of communities and culture. I also want to acknowledge that we're sitting on some beautiful artwork by Casey Adams, as Elder Mccloud said. Not only is it a representation of birch bark biting, but it's also a representation of circuit boards. So Casey Adams has merged both the present and the past and recognized the really unique dynamic that happens in educational institutions where we acknowledge, as we are tonight, devastating history and bringing it forward to bring an opportunity for knowledge to make sure that it never happens again. And so Manitoagi Bidazige, where the Creator sits or exists and brings light, is really about what we're here to do tonight. We're bringing light to a devastating history. We're bringing light to the truth of what Canada has done to its citizens. And we're bringing light to all of us who are sitting here in communion and community together. That's really what RRC Polytech is about, and why this building was built, to bring community together. I'm also very honored to be here tonight because RRC has recently made a commitment to incorporate equity, diversity, and inclusion in everything we do. And that's really hard to do. And this is one of the first steps, is not only to commit to truth and reconciliation, but to recognize that all of our systems, all of the ways that we act and behave and create policy have to be challenged. And this film and the survivors who are here tonight are a fantastic example of how systemic change doesn't happen if there isn't advocacy and questioning and consistent challenge to the ways that we think and live and grow together. So I am honored to be in the presence of those of you who created an opportunity for us to be here tonight, to learn from you, to learn from the experience, and to honor and acknowledge the journey that we've been on and that you've been on. So thank you.
I invite someone, the next speaker. I just wanted to also say that this film could be triggering, or you might feel uncomfortable, so please do take care of yourself. You do come first, and feel free to take a walk, have something to eat or something to drink if you need, and please reach out and speak to people if you need that support, and we'll be happy to support you. And I'd like to invite Reva Harrison, our VP of External Relations and Community Engagement, to
Thanks, Moran and Christine and Albert, for your moving words. I'm pleased to be here on behalf of the Canadian Museum for Human Rights and bringing greetings, and thank you all so much for joining us at tonight's event. The Purge is a dark moment in our history that is not as well known as we wish it to be, and so part of our role at the museum is to help raise awareness about this moment in time. It was a systematic persecution of 2S LGBTQ plus people from the Federal Civil Service, the military, the RCMP. It devastated the lives and careers of thousands of individuals over those decades, and is one of the largest workplace violations of human rights history in our country's history. How did it end? Well, it ended because of a whole bunch of folks sitting right there who, and sprinkled in other seats throughout the room. People who put everything on the line to change the world we live in and gave a tremendous amount of themselves and sacrifice. And what did that mean? What does that mean today? Well, it means that for people like me, we get to work a little more safely than we might have otherwise. And with that, we owe you an incredible debt of gratitude. You will hear from many of our distinguished guests during the panel following the movie. And at the museum, it is our tremendous honor to work with the Purge Fund, with survivors, people who lived these experiences and are so graciously sharing their time and their stories with us. We're working on developing an exhibit for the museum that we expect to open in 2024. And it will also have a traveling exhibit that we want to take to different parts of the country so we can continue to talk about why this is so important for us to understand where we've come from and its impact on the future, and to make sure that these types of things don't happen again. Tonight's event and other events between now and the exhibit opening are about continuing to talk about these issues and raise awareness about what we need to do next as a community and how we need to continue to work together. Thank you for coming tonight. I'd like to thank the college for being our host and our sponsor for this beautiful venue. It's a real honor to be in this space. And thank you all for joining us.
Thanks, Reba. So I also wanted to acknowledge our CEO from the Canadian Museum for Human Rights, Aisha Khan, who's here as well. And I really want to say thank you to the leadership here in the room for RSC and CMHR, because it's so important for leadership to be a part of conversation so that we can make change happen. And so we're talking about equity, diversity, inclusion. It's really great that folks are here to show support, but also learn through conversation and growing together. So thank you so much for all of your taking the time to be here today and making it a priority. And I now, unfortunately, Sarah Fadi, who's the producer of the film, is unable to make it today, but we have the person, Michelle Douglas, who's the executive director of the Purge Fund and who's been really, really instrumental in moving the project along, as well as you'll know more about her if you're attending the panel tomorrow. And she was instrumental in putting this lawsuit forward. And so I'd like to invite Michelle to come and speak about the film.
Hello, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to see you all. Thank you for coming out to the screening of The Fruit Machine. I'd like to thank Elder Albert Mccloud for your beautiful opening words and reflections, to the college for hosting, and to the Canadian Museum for Human Rights, who's working in partnership with the Purge Fund in tonight's screening. I'm sorry that the filmmaker isn't here personally to convey her passions about this incredible documentary. The Fruit Machine is, to my knowledge, the first full-length documentary revealing the horrors of what we now call the LGBT purge. The film itself reflects the first-person voices of many, and I'd like to acknowledge the presence of these courageous, extraordinary, beautiful people who stood up to serve their country, whether in the Canadian Armed Forces, the RCMP, or the Federal Public Service, and were punished extremely poorly by, and punished and shamed, discriminated against as matters of policy. You'll see the toll that discrimination takes. This film captures it incredibly well. You'll also see who stood with us, who stood up, who challenged it. You'll understand more about the history, because I think exposing the full history of Canada's past is extremely important. I think we're all waking up and understanding more about our obligations to learn more about Canada's history. This history of the purge is beautifully told, and I just want to thank Sarah Fodi, a filmmaker from Ottawa, for gaining the trust of purge survivors to come forward in very difficult circumstances, right? To relive trauma, and you'll see that. I'm glad, Haran, that you gave a trigger warning. This is a tough film. Many people who experience the LGBT purge are not in this film. And I also think of them and the pain that they also experienced. Because maybe they might want to have shared it, but wouldn't be in a position to necessarily. But some didn't even make it through the horrors of the LGBT purge. We lost so many to suicide, to shame. They returned to the closet. We just didn't see them again. And I think you'll understand a lot more about why when you see this film. So with that, I'd like to, again, acknowledge the filmmaker, Sarah Fody. It's a production produced by TV Ontario and is also available free online by just going to tvontario.org. The LGBT Purge Fund has also realized its value in the documenting of this history, so we've made it accessible in subtitled French as well, and also voiced over in French. So we're trying to have as many people be able to see this film as possible. So with that, Haran, I'll turn it back to you. Thanks for the honor of coming tonight and seeing this film. Thanks.
So without further ado, I'll play the film. This film is in English with French subtitles, so just to give you